Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
The broadcast had already begun. Bjorn Halvorsen stood on a platform of polished black stone, 3 meters above the floor of the Kavari Grand Resonance Chamber. No table, no chairs, no delegation beside him. Bjorn, alone in his UEC diplomatic uniform, bathed in cold blue light, while 900 Kavari officials watched from tiered galleries that curved upward into darkness like the inside of a throat. He knew. Not the details, not the timing, but the feeling. 18 years of diplomacy across dozens of species and star systems had taught him to read a room the way a soldier reads terrain. The exits were wrong, sealed, not open. The guards stood with their dorsal plates fanned wide in dominance posture, not the neutral fold of ceremonial escort. The resonance leader had not acknowledged him since he was brought in. Not a glance, not a greeting, nothing. 18 years. He had started at 20, the youngest human ever appointed to a UEC envoy team. By 25, he had brokered the tireless mining accords. By 30, he had negotiated transit rights through the Solvran Reach, a corridor 4 species had fought over for a century. By 34, he was the UEC's most respected diplomatic voice, the man they sent when the stakes were highest and the margins were thinnest. And then came the Kavari. He had spent 6 years specifically on this species because they were unlike anything he had encountered. The Kaldor were aggressive but emotional. You could find leverage in their pride. The Solvran were territorial but rational. You could build frameworks they respected. The Kavari were neither. They were absolute. Their worldview was not a position to be negotiated. It was a harmonic frequency, and anything that did not vibrate in accord was noise to be corrected. So, Bjorn had learned. He had studied their caste structures, the resonance, the chitin, the lattice, until he could identify a Kavari's rank by the color shift in their crest plates. He had trained his ear to detect the subsonic emotional undertones beneath their translated speech. He had sat through 14-hour resonance ceremonies without shifting his weight, because in Kavari culture, physical restlessness was a signal of spiritual incompleteness. 6 years of preparation for this moment, and the room was telling him that none of it mattered. Across 400 systems, the broadcast was live. Every species with a relay connection was watching. The Kavari had sent priority invitations on diplomatic frequencies, unprecedented for what was supposed to be a routine renewal of dialogue terms. Bjorn understood now why the audience was so large. This was not a negotiation. It was a performance. He kept his hands still at his sides, controlled his breathing. He stood at his full height, broad-shouldered, 6'2", carrying the same dense Nordic frame as his brother. Diplomats were supposed to look soft. Bjorn never had. He had been told more than once by alien delegations that he looked like he belonged in a combat unit, not a negotiation chamber. He took it as a compliment. Strength did not disqualify a man from wanting peace. It made the choice meaningful. The Kavari and the galleries noticed. They always did. This human was not built like the fragile technicians and scientists they had catalogued in their studies of the species. He stood the way chitin warriors stood, weight balanced, shoulders set, eyes level. It created a dissonance in their perception that Bjorn had learned to use to his advantage over 6 years of interaction. Today, it would not save him, but he would stand like this until the end. The resonance leader finally turned toward him, Vorak Thelsahin, first harmonic of the Kavari Dominion. His segmented body stood over 2 meters tall, 4 upper limbs folded in the formal position of address. Chitinous plating along his skull crest shifted to deep amber, the color of absolute authority. When he spoke, The translation implant in Bjorn's ear converted the harmonic vibrations into flat, tonal English, but the subsonic rumble still pressed against his chest like a fist. The species calling itself humanity has been granted the courtesy of dialogue for 6 solar cycles, Vorak said. The galleries hummed in low harmonic accord, 900 bodies resonating in agreement, a sound that made the stone platform vibrate beneath Bjorn's boots. In that time, humanity has refused the yielding. Twice. It has expanded into systems adjacent to Dominion territory without authorization. It has distributed communications to client species that the resonance has classified as dissonant. Bjorn did not react. He had heard variations of this before. The Kavari opened every formal session with a recitation of grievances. It was ritual, procedural, part of the harmonic structure of official discourse. But Vorak was not looking at him the way he looked at a diplomat. He was looking at him the way the Chitin caste looked at a corrective target. Crest plates locked in amber, upper limbs folded tight, not relaxed, but compressed, like springs. The body language of a sentence already decided. The resonance has determined that dialogue has failed, Vorak continued. The galleries shifted to a deeper chord, not because the Kavari lack patience, but because humanity lacks the capacity to understand its position in the order of civilizations. The air in the chamber changed. Bjorn caught it, that sharp, metallic tang that Kavari bodies released during heightened emotional states. He had spent 2 years learning to read their chemical signatures. This was not anger, not contempt. It was anticipation. 900 Kavari officials saturating the air with the scent of a conclusion already reached. Bjorn felt it settle over him like a weight. The understanding. Complete. Total. Calm. They were going to kill him. Not in secret. Not in a cell. Here. On this platform. In front of 400 systems. Because that was the point. The yielding was not just a ritual of submission, it was a demonstration of hierarchy. And when a species refused to submit, the demonstration required a different kind of lesson. He thought of Eric. His brother would be watching. Bjorn knew that with certainty. Eric always monitored diplomatic broadcasts involving the Kavari, not because he distrusted Bjorn, but because that was who Eric was. He watched. He prepared. He built contingencies in silence and stored them in drawers that nobody opened until the day everything went wrong. They had argued about this assignment. Not bitterly. They never argued bitterly. Over dinner, over drinks, the way they had argued about everything since they were boys in Trondheim. Eric thought the Kavari could not be negotiated with. Bjorn thought they had to be. Both positions were honest. Both came from the same place, the belief that humanity had to survive, and the disagreement was only ever about method. Eric had said, the last time they spoke face to face, I built a plan, in case. Bjorn had smiled. You always build a plan. Bjorn had not asked for details. He did not need to. That was trust. That was family. You did not question your brother's love by auditing his work. You let him watch your back, and you watched his, and you moved through the world knowing that whatever happened, you were not alone. He was alone now. On a platform of black stone, with 900 alien officials humming the frequency of his death, Bjorn Halvorsen made his choice. Not to beg, not to bargain, not to submit, to speak. Bjorn Halvorsen, Vorak said, and the chamber locked into silence. Perfect harmonic zero. You will be given one final opportunity. Speak the words of the yielding on behalf of your species. Acknowledge humanity's place within the Dominion's order, and this matter will be resolved. 400 systems watching, billions of eyes. The Kavari expected him to break. They had studied human psychology. They knew about fear responses, about survival instincts, about the way soft creatures folded when death was certain and escape was impossible. They had not studied Bjorn Halvorsen. Bjorn looked directly at Vorak, held the gaze for 3 full seconds, an eternity in Kavari interaction, where sustained eye contact from a lower status being was considered a harmonic challenge. Then he turned, not to the galleries, to the camera drone hovering 6 meters to his left, the one feeding the signal to every relay in the network. "My name is Bjorn Halvorsen," he said. His voice was steady, not loud, not strained. The voice of a man who had spoken in rooms like this for years and had never once raised his volume to be heard. "Senior diplomatic envoy of the United Earth Coalition. I speak to every human watching this broadcast, and to every species that values its own sovereignty." Vorak's crest plates shifted, amber to dark ochre, displeasure bleeding into anger. The galleries stirred, a low, grinding harmonic of disapproval. "I was sent here to find peace," Bjorn continued. He did not look at the guards. He did not look at the blade. He looked into the lens. "I have spent 6 years learning the language, the culture, and the traditions of the Kavari Dominion because I believed understanding was the path to coexistence. I still believe that. Peace is not weakness. It never was. The harmonics in the chamber were building now. Dissonance. Bjorn was creating dissonance in the resonance chamber itself, the worst possible offense in Kavari culture. Every word he spoke without submission was a vibration out of accord, and 900 officials were physically reacting to it, crest plates flickering, limbs tightening, the air thickening with chemical agitation. "But peace requires both sides to choose it," he said. "And today, the Kavari Dominion has chosen otherwise. So I will say this clearly, for the record, for history, for every species watching. Humanity does not kneel. Not because we are proud, because kneeling here means every civilization in this galaxy learns that sovereignty is a privilege granted by the powerful, not a right." He paused. One breath. The chamber was vibrating so hard the stone beneath his feet hummed. "To my brother," he said. Quieter now. Not breaking eye contact with the lens. "You were right. You were always right. And I need you to know, I do not regret choosing differently. We both chose to protect them, just in different ways." He straightened, shoulders back, full height, the same frame as his twin, built for war, used for words. "Do what you do best, Eric. I trust you. I always have." Vorak raised one upper limb. 2 chitin guards stepped onto the platform. They moved in perfect synchronization, dorsal plates fully fanned, carrying short-handled blades with single curved edges, ceremonial correction weapons used only for sanctioned kills. The blade meant the death was intentional, personal, recorded in caste law. Bjorn watched them approach. He did not step back. He did not close his eyes. He stood exactly as he had stood for 6 years in every Kavari chamber and every resonance ceremony. Present, composed, unbroken. The blade came down, clean, single stroke. The sound it made was swallowed by the chamber's acoustics. Bjorn Halvorsen dropped. The broadcast did not cut. The camera held on the platform. 6 seconds. 7. 8. The body of a man who had spent his whole life building bridges between species, lying on black stone in cold blue light. Vorak stepped forward. Crest plates full amber. He addressed the galaxy. "Let this serve as instruction. Defiance is not sovereignty. It is noise. And noise is silenced." The galleries hummed. Perfect accord. The sound of absolute certainty that what had just happened was correct, necessary, and final. 400 systems watched. None intervened. 14 light minutes away, aboard the UEC carrier Fenrir, Eric Halvorsen watched his brother die. The flag bridge was silent. 16 officers and tactical staff sat at their stations, and not one of them moved. The broadcast played on the main tactical display, a screen designed for fleet movements and battle projections, now showing a body on black stone and a Kavari leader lecturing the galaxy about obedience. Eric stood at the command rail, both hands on the metal, knuckles flat. His face showed nothing. The bridge crew had served with him long enough to know what that meant. Eric Halverson was not a man who raised his voice. His reputation had entered every room before he did for the last 15 years. The youngest fleet commander in SFC history, undefeated across 4 campaigns. The man whose battle plans were studied at the academy, not because they were brilliant, but because they were inevitable. Each move built on the last. All contingencies accounted for. The outcome calculated before the first shot was fired. The officers called him ANVIL, not to his face, but he knew. He had never corrected it. Right now, ANVIL was silent, and the silence on that bridge was the loudest thing any of them had ever heard. Commander Rask, his XO, stood 3 steps to his left. 9 years together. Rask had seen Eric receive news of ambushes, lost ships, dead Marines. He had never seen this. The general's stillness was not composure. It was structural, weight-bearing, the kind of stillness that held something enormous in place, and if it cracked, everything behind it would come through at once. "Sir," Rask said, barely above a whisper. "Comms to UEC Commander down. All diplomatic and priority channels are being jammed across the board. Source signature is Kavari." Eric did not respond. He was watching the screen. The body on the platform, his brother's body. The man who had sat across from him at a kitchen table in Trondheim when they were 17, arguing about whether humanity's future was in words or warships. The man who had called him 3 weeks ago, laughing about something stupid, some old joke from their childhood that neither of them could remember the origin of, but both of them still found funny. Gone, on black stone, in blue light, while the galaxy watched and did nothing. "Sir," Rask again, steady but pressing. "Emergency pings from Outer Colony 7 and 12. Kavari fleet signatures detected on their borders. Multiple capital-class vessels. Formation reads as pre-assault positioning." Eric blinked. Once. The tactical part of his mind, the part that never stopped running, not even now, was already assembling the picture. The jamming, the border movements, the execution timed to a live broadcast on maximum galactic distribution. This was not arrogance. This was a sequenced operation. Kill the ambassador. Jam communications, position fleets on colonial borders, wait for humanity to fracture, debate, panic, political paralysis. The Kavari expected weeks of chaos, emergency sessions, factions arguing over response while the Dominion tightened the noose system by system. They had studied human politics. They had modeled human decision-making. They had planned for every reaction a civilian government would have. They had not planned for Article 7. Eric released the command rail. "Rask." "Sir, War Powers Charter, Article 7. Assassination of a senior diplomatic envoy during an official diplomatic function constitutes an automatic act of war. Military authority transfers to Solar Fleet Command immediately. No civilian vote required. No waiting period. Yes, sir. Log it. Timestamp it. Broadcast it on every military channel we still control." Rask moved. Around the bridge, officers straightened. Hands returned to keyboards and control interfaces. The paralysis began to crack, not from a speech, not from anger, but because Eric Halverson had pointed the way forward. The room followed when he moved, the way it always had. "Navigation," Eric said. Lieutenant Breda looked up from his console, young, steady. "Time to reposition 1st Expeditionary to the Kavari border corridor." Breda's hands moved fast. 14 hours, 6 minutes standard compression, 12 hours 40 at emergency tolerance. 14 hours. The Kavari had known exactly where his fleet was stationed. They had timed the execution to the minute. Maximum distance, maximum response delay. Professional. Thorough. Comms, Eric said. Backup military mesh. Hardline protocol. Laser-tight beam to every ship in First Expeditionary. Direct links only. No broadcast. Sir, the Kavari jamming covers. Standard and diplomatic frequencies. The military mesh runs rotating narrowband. They cannot jam what they have not mapped. Get me my fleet. Silence. Keys clicking. Then, one by one, green lights on the communications board. Ships responding. The mesh held. Eric looked at the tactical display one last time. The broadcast had ended. The screen now showed fleet positions, colony markers, and the red signatures of Kavari capital ships gathering like a slow fist around humanity's outer territories. He turned to Rask. Send to all fleet captains. Priority 1. Rask waited. Contingency ANVIL is active. Rask sent it. Did not ask what it meant. On 16 ships across the First Expeditionary Fleet, captains received the message. They opened sealed orders that had been loaded into their command safes the day Eric Halverson took command. Orders built in silence, tested in theory, never spoken about in briefings. Designed for exactly this. All captains read their orders. The commands were carried out immediately. They had all watched the same broadcast. They had seen a man stand on alien stone, refuse to kneel, and die for it. And every single one of them knew that the Kavari had just killed the wrong brother. The compression corridor was dark. No stars. No reference points. Just the deep, vibrating hum of 16 ships pushing through folded space at emergency tolerance. Their corridor drives running 15% beyond rated capacity. Reactor cores burning hot enough that the engineering crews on every vessel had standing orders to report thermal margins every 4 minutes. General Eric Halverson sat in his quarters, alone for the first time in 11 hours. The room was small. Flag officers on UEC carriers were not given luxury. They were given function. A bunk, a desk, a terminal, a locker. Eric had added nothing to it in 4 years aboard the Fenrir. No photographs on the walls, no personal effects on the desk. Everything he carried was in his locker, and there was not much. He opened it now. Inside, on the top shelf, next to a sidearm he had never fired outside of qualification, there was a wooden box. Old. Real wood. Pine, from Norway. Their mother had made it. She had been a carpenter before the UEC relocated Northern European populations during the second climate consolidation. She built things with her hands because she believed objects should exist in the world, not just on screens. Eric opened the box. Inside were 2 items. A photograph, printed on paper, not displayed on glass, of 2 boys standing on a dock in Trondheim, maybe 12 years old, holding fishing rods, squinting into pale Arctic sunlight. Same height, same shoulders, same face. One of them was laughing. The other was smiling at the one who was laughing. Eric could not remember which was which. The second item was a note, handwritten. Bjorn had sent it 8 years ago, when Eric received his commission as fleet commander. 4 lines on actual paper, because Bjorn knew his brother distrusted anything digital for personal matters. Eric did not read it. He had memorized it years ago. He touched the edge of the paper with his thumb. Once. Then he closed the box, closed the locker, and stood up. He looked at the mirror above the small sink in the corner of his quarters. His brother's face looked back at him. Same jawline, same deep-set gray eyes, same lines forming at the temples from years of squinting at tactical displays and foreign suns. He held the gaze for 3 seconds. Then he turned, walked through the hatch, and went to the bridge. The brother was done. ANVIL was back. On the bridge of the Fenrir, the tactical display showed the Kavari advance in real time. Military mesh relays were feeding data from automated sensor buoys positioned along the colonial frontier. Small, passive, nearly undetectable. Eric had ordered them seated along every major approach corridor 3 years ago. A quiet investment. No one had noticed. Now they were the only eyes humanity had. "Report," Eric said as he reached the command rail. Rask was already there. Years of service together had taught the XO to have information ready before Eric asked for it. "Kavari forward elements have entered Colony 7's orbital threshold. 26 ships, 12 Chiton-class heavy cruisers, 8 escort frigates, 6 troop carriers. Landing craft are deploying. Estimate 4,000 Chiton warriors on the ground within the hour." Colony defense status. Governor Lundgren has activated the colonial militia. 1,100 armed civilians, no heavy weapons. They have the settlement perimeter fortified, but they cannot hold against 4,000 Chiton. "They do not need to hold," Eric said. "They need to not break. There is a difference." Rask nodded. He understood. Holding meant winning. Not breaking meant surviving long enough. "What about the Kavari main fleet?" Eric asked. Rask pulled up the wider tactical picture. Red signatures, dozens of them, clustered around a staging point 60 light minutes beyond Colony 7. Consolidated battle fleet, approximately 90 combat vessels, 40+ capital class. They are holding position, not advancing yet. "They are waiting," Eric said. "For what?" "For us to do exactly what we are about to do. They expect us to rush to Colony 7, commit everything to the defense. Then the main fleet moves in and traps us against the colony's gravity well." Rask looked at him. "And we are still going to Colony 7? "Yes." "Because the colonists?" "Because the Kavari think they know the next 4 moves. They are wrong about the 5th. Rask did not ask about the 5th move. He had learned years ago that Eric revealed his plans in sequence. Each officer received exactly the information they needed at exactly the moment they needed it, not before. Trust ran in one direction on this ship. The crew trusted Eric completely, and Eric trusted his plan. "Time to corridor exit," Eric said. 47 minutes, Brita answered from navigation. "All ships to combat stations. Weapons hot on exit. Electronic warfare packages active the moment we drop into real space. I want the Kavari blind before they know we are there." The orders rippled through the fleet. On 16 ships, crews moved to battle positions. Railgun capacitors charged, missile batteries loaded, ECM arrays powered to full. The one area where human technology held an undeniable edge over everything the Kavari possessed. Human electronic warfare could spoof sensor arrays, generate false fleet signatures, and jam targeting solutions across an entire engagement zone. The Kavari had never faced it at full deployment. They had studied human technology from intelligence reports and intercepted specifications. Reports and specifications did not prepare you for the real thing. The Kavari patrol squadron at Junction Point Sarin 4 consisted of 8 ships, 4 light cruisers and 4 picket corvettes, arranged in a standard detection screen across the most likely human approach vector. Their assignment was simple: detect any human fleet movement and relay the information to the main battle fleet. They were not positioned to fight. They were positioned to watch. They had been watching for 11 hours. In that time, their sensor arrays had detected nothing. No compression signatures, no drive emissions, no communications traffic. The human fleet, wherever it was, appeared to be paralyzed, exactly as the resonance had predicted. The patrol commander, a Chiton sub-officer named Kesiva, had already filed 2 reports confirming no contact. The third was being prepared when his sensor operator emitted a sharp harmonic burst, the Kavari equivalent of a shout. Compression exit, multiple signatures, bearing, The rest of the sentence died in static. Eric's fleet dropped out of compression at a distance of 42,000 kilometers, knife range by naval combat standards. The standard emergence distance was 200,000 kilometers. Military doctrine across every known species called for at least 100,000 to allow for post-compression sensor calibration and fleet formation. Eric had cut that by more than half. The corridor drive screamed at the violation. 2 ships reported capacitor damage from the forced early exit. Eric had calculated that cost before the fleet entered compression. Acceptable. The ECM packages hit first. 16 ships broadcasting full-spectrum electronic warfare simultaneously. The Kavari patrol sensor arrays did not degrade gradually. They collapsed. All screens, targeting solutions, and communication relays went dark in the same instant. 8 ships, blind and deaf, at a range where human railguns did not miss. "All batteries," Eric said. "Fire." Railgun salvos crossed the gap in less than 2 seconds. Tungsten penetrators traveling at 4% of light speed struck the Kavari light cruisers along their lateral axis, the one angle where phase screens were weakest because Kavari doctrine assumed no enemy would be close enough to exploit it. The first cruiser broke apart amidships. The second lost its forward section. The third took a penetrator through its reactor housing and detonated. The fourth managed to activate its phase screen, 2 seconds too late. The railgun rounds were already inside the screen's effective radius. They punched through the organic hull like needles through membrane. The corvettes tried to run. Missile salvos caught them before they could spool their drives. 4 ships, 12 missiles, 41 seconds. From emergence to silence, 3 minutes and 14 seconds. 8 Kavari ships, no survivors. No distress signal sent. The ECM had ensured that. As far as the Kavari main fleet knew, the patrol at Saren 4 was still filing routine reports of no contact. Eric watched the debris field expand on the tactical display. No satisfaction. No triumph. This was not victory. This was the door opening. Navigation. Full speed to Colony 7. RASC. Status on the Kavari orbital group. Still deploying landing forces. They have not detected us. They will in approximately 90 minutes when the patrol fails to report. That gives us a window. We use all of it. Colony 7 was burning. Not the settlement itself. The Kavari had not bombarded it. That was not their method. The Dominion did not destroy assets it intended to claim. Instead, 4,000 chitin warriors had landed in a perimeter around the colony's main settlement and begun a systematic advance inward. Controlled, methodical. They moved in harmonic squads of 12, each unit synchronized to a shared vibrational frequency that coordinated their movements without verbal commands. Governor Lundgren had done what he could. The colonial militia, 1,100 men and women with standard-issue rifles and improvised barricades, had established a defensive line along the settlement's outer ring. They were not soldiers. They were engineers, miners, agricultural technicians, and administrators who had been handed weapons and told to hold. They were holding. Barely. The chitin warriors were faster, stronger, and armored in organic plating that stopped small arms fire at anything beyond close range. But the colonists knew their terrain. Corridors, buildings, maintenance tunnels, all of it. They fell back in layers, made the Kavari fight for each 100 meters, and when a position became untenable, they collapsed it. Literally. Structural charges in building foundations, buried during colony construction as a standard UEC precaution. The Kavari advance had slowed. The Chitin commander on the ground was adapting, routing squads through underground utility corridors, flanking defensive positions, applying pressure on 3 axes simultaneously. Lundgren's last transmission on the military mesh had been 8 words. Still here. Not broken. Could use some help. Help arrived at 1400 hours colony time. Eric's fleet entered Colony 7's orbital space and found 12 Kavari heavy cruisers in high orbit, 6 escort frigates in lower formation, and 6 troop carriers in geosynchronous position above the settlement. The carriers were still cycling landing craft to the surface. They had not expected company. "ECM full spread," Eric ordered. "Missile screen on the carriers, railgun batteries on the cruisers. I want those troop ships deaf before they can recall their landing craft." This was not Saren 4. The Kavari cruisers were capital ships, heavy armor, phase screens online, harmonic pulse batteries charged. They reacted within seconds of detecting the human fleet. Phase screens flared to full power. The first harmonic pulse volley crossed the engagement zone in a wave of resonance energy that shook the Fenrir's hull plating like a struck bell. Damage report. Forward compartments 12 through 16, reporting microfractures. Hull integrity holding. Armor absorbed the primary resonance. Ceramic titanium composite. It did not stop harmonic pulses entirely. Nothing did. But it dampened the resonance effect enough to keep the molecular bonds from shattering. The Kavari expected human ships to break apart the way every other species' ships did when hit by harmonic weapons. Human ships shuddered and held. Return fire, concentrated salvos, target their screen generators. Dorsal mounts, just behind the crest plating. Eric had spent 3 years studying Kavari ship architecture. Bjorn had sent him the schematics, acquired during diplomatic exchanges, filed under cultural documentation, technically not classified, but buried deep enough that no one on the Kavari side realized what they had given away. One brother at the negotiating table, quietly gathering what the other brother would need if the table was ever kicked over. The railgun salvos hit the Kavari cruisers at their screen generators. Phase screens flickered. 2 cruisers lost coverage on their port side. Eric's missile batteries found the gaps instantly. Coordinated fire. 3 missiles per gap, detonating against bare hull. The battle lasted 22 minutes. Eric lost 2 frigates and a destroyer. The Kavari lost 8 cruisers, 4 escorts, and all 6 troop carriers. The surviving Kavari ships, 4 cruisers and 2 frigates, broke formation and ran for the main fleet's staging point. Eric let them go. "They will report," Rask said. "I want them to report. I want Vorak to hear exactly what happened here." Below, on the surface of Colony 7, 4,000 Chiton warriors were now stranded. No orbital support, no extraction, no resupply. The colonial militia did not know that yet, but they would within the hour when the Kavari ground advance suddenly stopped and the harmonic coordination frequency went silent. 1,100 civilians with rifles had not broken. Eric made a note to learn Governor Lundgren's first name when this was over. The Kavari resonance chamber on the Dominion flagship Absolute Accord was vibrating with dissonance. Vorak Thel Sahin stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by 16 senior resonance officials and the Chiton fleet commander, Torvek An Sahil. The reports from Colony 7 had arrived 12 minutes ago. The harmonic disruption they caused was still reverberating through the chamber's acoustics. "This is not possible," said resonance official Drenthis, his crest plates flickering between amber and gray. Confusion and distress in rapid alternation. The models projected a minimum of 9 planetary rotations before any military response. Their political structure requires consensus, debate, faction reconciliation. Their political structure activated something called Article 7, Torvek said. The Chiton commander's voice carried the flat harmonic of a warrior delivering facts he did not enjoy. The assassination of their diplomat triggered an automatic transfer of military authority. There was no debate, no consensus required. Command went directly to their fleet general. Silence. The kind of silence that in a Kavari chamber was itself a form of dissonance, the absence of harmonic accord where accord was expected. "The fleet general," Vorak said slowly. "The brother, twin brother," Torvik confirmed. Identical genetic duplicate. Commander of their first expeditionary fleet. Service record indicates 4 campaigns, no defeats. Call sign among their ranks is ANVIL. Vorak's crest plates locked to deep amber. His 4 upper limbs unfolded slowly, a display of authority meant to stabilize the chamber's harmonic. 1 fleet, Vorak said. 16 ships. We have 90. This changes nothing. The correction proceeds. Torvik's dorsal plates shifted, a subtle movement, disagreement contained within deference. First harmonic, our patrol at Saren 4 is gone. They dismantled our orbital group at Colony 7 in 22 minutes. Their electronic warfare capabilities exceeded our projections by a significant margin. They targeted phase screen generators with precision that suggests detailed knowledge of our ship architecture. How? Torvik paused. The ambassador. 6 years of diplomatic access, cultural exchanges, technical documentation shared under the framework of mutual understanding. The dissonance in the chamber deepened. 9 officials shifting their harmonics simultaneously, the sound of a political structure realizing that the peace process it had used as a tool of control had been used right back. Vorak absorbed this. His crest plates did not waver. 90 ships against 16. Order the fleet to advance. Full engagement protocol. End this. Eric was on the bridge when the sensor buoys lit up. Kavari main fleet is moving, Rask reported. 90+ signatures. Full advance. Bearing directly for Colony 7. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. Eric studied the display. 90 ships, 40 capital class, phase screens, harmonic pulse batteries, organic hull regeneration. Against his 14 remaining combat vessels, 2 lost at Colony 7, several more carrying damage. 14 against 90. Sir, Rask said carefully, we cannot hold Colony 7 against that. No, Eric said, we cannot. He paused, looked at the display, looked at Colony 7 rotating slowly below the fleet. 1,100 people who had not broken. Comms, Eric said. Open a channel. All relays in the network. All species. Full galactic broadcast. The communications officer looked at Eric. Channel open, sir. You are live. Eric did not step to a podium, did not adjust his uniform, did not prepare remarks. He stood at the command rail, the same way he always stood, and he spoke. This is General Eric Halverson, commander of the United Earth Coalition 1st Expeditionary Fleet. 14 hours ago, the Kavari Dominion executed my brother on a live broadcast and called it justice. He paused. 1 beat. This is our response. The combat footage played. Saren 4, 8 ships erased in 3 minutes. Colony 7 orbit, 12 cruisers broken, troop carriers burning, phase screens collapsing under targeted fire. The footage was raw, unedited, stamped with fleet tactical overlay data. Clinical, precise, undeniable. Then Eric spoke again. 4 words. The same words his brother had said on a platform of black stone, alone, in blue light, moments before a blade ended his life. Humanity does not kneel. He signaled. The channel closed. Across 400 systems, all species that had watched Bjorn Halverson die now watched what his brother had done in response. The same words, from the same bloodline, spoken not as a plea for dignity, but as a statement of consequence. And on the bridge of the Absolute Accord, Vorak Thelsahin heard those words, and for the first time in his memory, the harmonic in his chest faltered. The Kavari fleet came in like a tide, all ships in full harmonic battle formation. Capital cruisers at the core, escort screens on the flanks, destroyer groups running ahead in sensor sweep patterns. The formation was textbook Kavari doctrine, overwhelming, synchronized, beautiful in the way that a natural disaster is beautiful. Every ship vibrating on the same harmonic frequency, their movements coordinated through the Absolute Accord central resonance array, like instruments in an orchestra, conducted by a single hand. Vorak Thel-Sahin stood at the command platform of the Absolute Accord and watched his fleet advance on the tactical display. 92 ships against 14 human vessels. The math was not a calculation. It was a certainty. Full engagement protocol, Vorak ordered. Standard envelopment. Harmonic batteries charged to maximum. End this in one pass. On the bridge of the Fenrir, Eric watched them come. The tactical display showed the Kavari formation as a wall of red, a crescent-shaped wave designed to wrap around a defensive position from 3 sides simultaneously and crush it. They are in full harmonic sync, Rask said. 92 ships coordinated through the Absolute Accord. Pulse batteries are charging for a combined volley. Combined volley, Eric repeated. They will fire simultaneously. Yes, sir. If that hits us in a tight formation, we lose everything in one strike. Then we will not be in a tight formation. Eric turned to the tactical station. Deploy the ECM constellation. Full spread. Pattern ANVIL 7. Across the fleet, ships launched ECM drones. Small, fast, expendable units loaded with electronic warfare packages, identical to the ones mounted on full-sized warships. They scattered into the space between Eric's fleet and the approaching Kavari armada, and they began to broadcast. False fleet signatures. Dozens of them. Each drone projecting the sensor profile of a UEC destroyer or cruiser, complete with drive emissions, reactor signatures, and communications traffic. To the Kavari sensor arrays, the 14 human ships suddenly became 60, spread across a wide orbital arc, covering Colony 7 in a formation that looked desperate and thin, a small force trying to screen a planet against an overwhelming attack. Vorak saw it. 60 human ships. Impossible. But the sensor data was clear. Reinforcements, Resonance official Drenthis said, his crest plates flickering gray. They have been reinforced. Other human fleets. No, Torvik said from his tactical position. The Chiton commander studied the display with the cold focus of a professional warrior. The signatures are inconsistent. Reactor output does not match drive emissions on several contacts. This is electronic deception. Can you identify which contacts are real? Vorak asked. Not at this range. Their electronic warfare is... Torvik paused. Searched for the harmonic. Superior. We would need to close to visual range to distinguish real ships from phantoms. Then we close, Vorak said. Break the fleet into pursuit groups. 8 ships per group. Distribute the remainder across the nearest elements. Each group takes a sector and engages whatever it finds. Real ships die. Phantoms are identified and ignored. Torvik's dorsal plates shifted. First harmonic. Breaking formation will disrupt our harmonic synchronization. Pursuit groups cannot maintain full resonance coordination independently. Our combat effectiveness... They are outnumbered, Vorak said. Even at reduced coordination. The outcome does not change. Execute. The order went out. The Kavari crescent broke apart into pursuit groups, each moving to a different sector of the wide human formation. The perfect orchestra became 11 separate ensembles, each trying to maintain local harmonic coordination while hunting targets that might or might not exist. Eric watched the crescent fragment on his tactical display. They split, Rask said. There was something in his voice, not disbelief, not relief. Recognition. The plan was working. Pursuit groups of 8, Eric confirmed. Each group has 2 to 3 capital ships, and the rest escorts. Local harmonic coordination only. They just cut their own strength into pieces. Orders, sir. All ships. Attack pattern ANVIL 3. We take them in sequence. Closest pursuit group first. Concentrated fire. Full ECM on adjacent groups to delay their response. We kill one group and move to the next before they can reconsolidate. Eric's fleet surged forward. The first Kavari pursuit group, 2 heavy cruisers, 3 destroyers, 3 frigates, was chasing a cluster of ECM Phantoms in Sector 4 when Eric's fleet hit them from the flank. Railgun salvos targeted phase screen generators. Missiles followed into the gaps. ECM blanketed the adjacent pursuit groups, feeding them false data that showed Sector 4 still quiet. The two cruisers died in under a minute. The destroyers fought. Kavari warriors did not flee. But without the heavy cruisers' phase screens covering the group, they were exposed. Human railguns at close range punched through destroyer armor like it was not there. 3 minutes. 8 ships gone. Eric did not pause. Next group, Sector 7, all ahead. The second pursuit group had realized something was wrong. Their local harmonic had detected the vibrations of dying ships, a subsonic death chord that carried through space in ways that human instruments could not detect, but Kavari biology could feel. They were turning to consolidate when Eric's fleet dropped on them. This time the Kavari were ready. Phase screens up, harmonic batteries charged. The first pulse volley hit the Fenrir broadside and shook the ship so hard that every crew member not strapped down was thrown from their feet. Hull fractures propagated across 3 decks. A secondary reactor went offline. Damage? Decks 9 through 11 compromised. Sealing now. We lost the secondary reactor. Main reactor holding. Time on their calibration cycle? 11 seconds from the end of that volley. Mark, now. Eric gave the order. All ships. Close to point blank. Everything we have. Now. The ships drove straight into the Kavari formation, directly into the space between the enemy vessels during the 11-second window when their harmonic pulse batteries were cycling, recalibrating the resonance frequency for the next volley, a process that could not be interrupted or shortened. 11 seconds. At point-blank range, human railguns fired twice per second. Missiles crossed the gap in under a heartbeat. The human ships poured everything they had into 8 Kavari vessels that could not shoot back. 7 seconds in, 3 Kavari ships were breaking apart. 9 seconds in, 2 more lost their phase screens. At 11 seconds, the surviving ships fired, but Eric's fleet was already pulling back, ECM drones flooding the space with false signatures to cover the withdrawal. 2 more pursuit groups destroyed. 19 Kavari ships gone in 12 minutes, but the cost was mounting. The UEC destroyer Haldun took a direct harmonic pulse during the withdrawal. The resonance shattered its hull from the inside, molecular bonds dissolving in a cascading wave from bow to stern. The ship came apart in a spray of atmosphere and debris. 240 crew. No survivors. The frigate Ostmark lost its drive section to a Kavari ramming attempt. A Chiton destroyer, badly damaged and unable to fire, had accelerated directly into the Ostmark's engine block. Both ships were gone. The Kavari had died rather than flee. Eric noted that. Respected it. Filed it away. 12 ships remaining. Sir, Rask said, pursuit groups are consolidating. They are reforming into a single mass, abandoning pursuit protocol. How many ships remaining in their fleet? 71 combat effective, 12 against 71. And the Kavari were done being stupid. Vorak had seen 2 pursuit groups vanish from his tactical display in 12 minutes. He did not need a third lesson. The order went out from the absolute accord in a single harmonic pulse. All groups reconsolidate. Full formation. Tight cluster around the flagship. Torvek executed the order instantly, pulling every surviving ship back into a single, massive harmonic wall that could not be fragmented or ambushed. He is adapting, Rask said. He is intelligent, Eric said. Not admiration. Assessment. Sir, we cannot engage 71 ships in a consolidated formation, not with 12. We do not need to engage 71 ships. Eric studied the tactical display. His eyes found the center of the Kavari formation, the ship around which every other vessel was orienting. We need to engage one. The absolute accord. Vorak's flagship. The central resonance array that broadcasts the fleet's master frequency, the harmonic baseline that every Kavari ship tuned itself to, the way a diapason sets the pitch for every instrument in a chamber. Without that reference tone, individual ships could not synchronize their weapons, their movements, or their communications. They would not simply fall out of rhythm. They would lose the frequency entirely, each ship searching for a pitch that no longer existed. Not an orchestra without a conductor, an orchestra that had gone deaf. "All ships," Eric said. "Wedge formation. All ECM forward. Maximum jamming on their targeting arrays. We are going through the center." Rask looked at him. Did not ask. The look said everything. This was a one-way push. Some of these ships were not coming back. "I know," Eric said. The human fleet formed a wedge and drove directly into the heart of the Kavari formation. ECM at full pour, every electronic warfare system screaming noise into the Kavari sensor networks. The jamming was not perfect. At this range, with this many ships, the Kavari could see them. But they could not lock targeting solutions. Their harmonic pulse batteries fired blind, volleys crashing into empty space, or glancing off armor at angles that dispersed the resonance instead of focusing it. The human fleet took hits. The cruiser Bjorgsen lost its forward section. The crew in the aft compartments kept fighting, firing railguns manually when the automated targeting went down. The frigate Kalstad took 3 glancing harmonic pulses and lost atmospheric containment across its port side. The crew sealed their suits and kept station. Eric's wedge punched through the outer screen and into the formation's core. The absolute accord was there. Massive. 3 times the size of the Fenrir. Its harmonic arrays, 6 towering spines rising from the dorsal hull, pulsed with resonance energy that was visible to the naked eye, a shimmering distortion in space that made the stars behind it waver. "Target the spines," Eric ordered. "All batteries, everything." The surviving ships of the wedge fired simultaneously. Railgun salvos and missile flights converged on the 6 harmonic spines. Phase screens flared. The first volley was absorbed. The second cracked 2 spines. The third shattered a 3rd spine and the phase screen generator beneath it. The absolute accord fired its main harmonic battery. The pulse hit the destroyer Voss at center mass. The ship did not break apart. It dissolved. Molecular bonds cascading apart in a wave of resonance energy. 312 crew. The frigate Ask drove into the gap the Voss had left and fired its entire missile complement at point-blank range into the exposed section of the Absolute Accord's hull. 32 missiles. The explosions tore through 3 decks and severed the connections to 2 more harmonic spines. 5 of 6 spines down. The Ask tried to pull away. A Kavari escort rammed it. Both ships crumpled together in a grinding collision of metal and organic hull material. The Ask was gone. 89 crew. 1 spine remaining, Rask reported. His voice was raw. The fleet's harmonic coordination is degrading. They are losing synchronization. "Hit the last one." The Fenrir itself made the run. Eric's flagship, already damaged, reactors running hot, armor fractured across multiple sections, drove straight at the Absolute Accord's remaining harmonic spine and fired every railgun it had. The spine shattered. The effect was immediate. Across the Kavari fleet, every ship that had been operating on the central harmonic frequency lost its connection simultaneously. Not a gradual fade, a severance, like cutting the strings on a room full of puppets at once. Ships drifted. Formations dissolved. Harmonic pulse batteries, which required coordinated frequency input to fire, went silent. Individual ship commanders, suddenly isolated, reverted to local decision-making. But the Kavari did not train for individual action. Their entire military doctrine was built on collective harmony. Without it, they did not adapt. They froze. Then they ran. Not in formation, not in organized withdrawal. Ships breaking in every direction, each captain choosing their own escape vector, the fleet scattering like a shattered mirror. Some collided with each other in the chaos. Others simply powered down weapons and drifted, their crews unable to function without harmonic direction. On the bridge of the crippled Absolute Accord, Vorak Thelsahin stood in silence. His crest plates had gone gray, the color of a Kavari who had lost harmonic connection. Around him, his officers were motionless. The chamber that had always vibrated with the deep, unified chord of command resonance was quiet for the first time in Vorak's life. He looked at the tactical display. His fleet, the pride of the Dominion, 92 ships that had never known defeat, was scattering across the void in directionless chaos. Human ships, battered and broken and burning, held their positions around Colony 7 like wolves standing over a kill. "How?" Drenthus whispered. His crest plates were cycling rapidly, gray, amber, gray, the pattern of a mind that could not find its frequency. They were 14 ships, one species, no harmonic culture. How? Vorak said nothing. He was looking at the debris field, human wreckage and Kavari wreckage drifting together, indistinguishable in death. He thought about the ambassador, the man on the platform, the man who had stood at full height and spoken to a camera while the blade was already in the air. He had not begged. Vorak realized now that he had expected him to beg. Every species begged. It was the natural response of lesser beings when confronted with the Dominion's authority. The ambassador had not begged, and his brother had not broken. Vorak understood, finally, what he had done. Not to humanity, to the Dominion. He had taken the most stable, ordered fleet in the galaxy and shattered it against a species that did not know how to kneel. The correction was supposed to teach humanity its place. Instead, it had taught the galaxy that the Kavari could be beaten. That lesson could never be taken back. The bridge of the Fenrir was quiet. Eric stood at the command rail. The tactical display showed the aftermath, debris fields, drifting hulks, the scattered remnants of the Kavari fleet fleeing in every direction. Colony 7 rotated below, intact. The colonial militia was reporting that the Kavari ground forces had laid down their weapons. 4,000 Chiton warriors, surrendering to 1,100 civilians with rifles. The numbers came in. Eric listened to each one. 7 ships lost. The Haldane, the Ostmark, the Voss, the Ask, the Bjorgsen, the Kalstead, the frigate Wren. 1,914 crew dead. Every name would be read, every family would be told, every loss would be recorded and carried forward, because the cost was real and permanent. 7 ships lost out of 14. With the 2 lost in the first engagement, more than half his fleet was gone. 41 Kavari ships destroyed, the rest scattered or crippled. The Absolute Accord drifting without power, its crew alive but its harmonic spine array, the symbol of Dominion authority, reduced to twisted wreckage on its hull. Rask approached. He looked 10 years older than he had 2 days ago. "Sir, UEC Command has re-established contact. The jamming has stopped. The Kavari do not have the fleet coordination to maintain it. Command is requesting a status report, and," he paused, "they are asking what your terms are for the Kavari." Eric looked at him. "Terms? For the ceasefire, the surrender, whatever comes next." Eric was quiet for a moment. He looked at the tactical display, at the debris field, at the wreckage of ships, his ships, their ships, drifting together in the silence of space where human crew members and thousands of Kavari warriors had been alive 6 hours ago. "Tell Command the terms are simple. The Kavari withdraw from all human-adjacent systems. They release every client species they have forced into the yielding, and they broadcast on every relay to every system what happened here. Not their version. The combat logs, unedited. And if they refuse, then I will take what remains of this fleet to their homeworld and make them watch their own harmonic spines shatter one by one until they understand that the word no is not noise. Rask nodded, sent the message. The bridge emptied slowly. Officers cycling out for rest rotation, medical teams moving through the ship, damage control crews working on hull breaches that would take weeks to repair. The Fenrir would fly again, but it would carry scars. Eric reached into his jacket, the pocket on the left side, above the chest. He pulled out a photograph. 2 boys on a dock in Trondheim, 12 years old, fishing rods, pale Arctic sunlight, one laughing, one smiling at the one who was laughing. He held it for a long time. Then he placed it on the command rail, leaning it against the metal so that it faced the viewport, faced the stars, the debris field, the planet below, and the empty space where a fleet had been and a brother had lived. "You were right too," Eric said quietly. "Peace was worth trying. It was always worth trying." He touched the edge of the photograph. "Once. I am sorry I was the only answer they would listen to." The bridge of the Fenrir was silent. The stars did not answer, and somewhere in the vast dark between worlds, the galaxy was learning a lesson that would not be forgotten. Diplomacy had failed. Humanity had not.
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.